And I want to bring in Democratic Congressman Glenn Ivey of Maryland. He's a member of the Appropriations Committee. Congressman, the ball is in the Senate's court right now because Republicans in the House already passed what they're calling a clean continuing resolution. In fact, that's something that we did hear from the majority leader in the Senate, Thune, mention. He said in a vacuum, this would get all Democrat support because it's clean. It doesn't have policy agenda priorities of Republicans on the bill. What's your reaction or response to that?
I mean, it overlooks H.R. 1, the big ugly bill that they passed that created this health care mess that the Democrats are trying to help the American people get out of before everything rolls in. So, the clean, dirty, whatever they want to call it, at the end of the day, notices are about to go out to the American people that their health care premiums are going to double or triple. All these procedural arguments they're making will be meaningless to the American people. All they're going to want to care about is, why are my health care costs going up to a point where I can't afford it anymore, and who's going to fix it? This stuff that the Republicans are talking about now doesn't address that concern.
I hear you, but a shutdown would also create a lot of pain for so many of your constituents, right? 11% of your district, some 40,000 people are federal employees. How do you respond to those who may question why Democrats are putting their jobs on the line?
Well, I think my constituents are telling me their jobs have been on the line since January 20th. I mean, the Trump administration has been a bulldozer when it comes to firing federal government employees, no matter what they're doing. They might be doing clinical trials for Alzheimer's. They might be doing work to address, healthcare issues and vaccines and the like. I've got people in my district who've been laid off for some of the most critical work that the government service can provide, and have been getting excellent reviews for 20 and 30 years. They've still been pushed out. So I think my folks recognize that this stuff about he might push us out unless we, bend the knee, they know that they can't trust Donald Trump, and they know what he's been doing to them for the past 9 months.
We've heard from multiple Republican leaders, the vice president, the House Speaker, and other Republicans that they're claiming Democrats want to fund free health care for undocumented immigrants. They're tying that to your health care priorities. We should note undocumented immigrants are ineligible for federally funded health care programs. They can't buy plans on the Affordable Care Exchanges, but that is the narrative Republicans are hammering home. It's what many of their voters are seeing and hearing. What's your response to that?
I mean, it's fundamentally dishonest, and I think it reflects the fact that they don't have a legitimate argument that they can make. The bottom line is the $1 trillion cuts to Medicaid were really, aimed at paying off the billionaire friends that Trump wants to help out. So it's a transfer from the needy to the greedy, essentially. And the health care cuts with respect to the ACA is a direct attack on regular people who need those benefits to pay for basic healthcare services, critical healthcare services. So they'll start talking about, illegals. Sooner or later, they'll probably go after transgender too. But at the end of the day, when those notices show up at those people's houses that their healthcare rates are about to triple, they're not going to care about all of that stuff. They're going to want to know how they can make sure they can maintain healthcare services for themselves and their families.
It is starting to get ugly, though, after yesterday's meeting with the top 4 leaders on the Hill with the White House. We saw the president post that fake video mocking Democrats pushing the racist replacement theory. Then we saw Jeffries respond by posting a real photo of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. Response to that argument.
Well, I'm responding to the situation that is in front of us, which is the Republicans have pursued a strategy of hurting American families, not just with health care, but, the president was just talking to the generals, bragging about the tariffs. He said it's raised trillions of dollars. It's actually raised only about $150 billion more than the old tariff, but that's because it acts as a sales tax on America. So he's driving up the cost of things for families. Health care is going up, electricity is growing up, groceries are going up, and what has happened with the attack on healthcare is you have then, therefore, 8 months of families being sicker and poor. That's the Trump agenda. We're saying we're going to fight for families. That's important. It's important to say this path is the wrong path for America.
On that healthcare piece of it, Majority Leader Thune has argued that Republicans are willing to negotiate even on the healthcare tax credits, just not right now. Watch.
Give us some time to do the rest of the appropriations bills, and if there are other issues they want to talk about, one of which is this premium tax credit issue, we welcome that conversation. But you can't hold the federal government hostage. Release the hostage, and then we can start talking about these other things.
Senator Wood, more time to negotiate makes sense. Why not give another 7 weeks to make something happen?
Started several months ago. Right, because John Thune has said, I will not talk to Democrats, and it was like a game of chicken. I'm going to drive down the highway, I'm going to aim at the other car, and I'm going to refuse to talk to them. And well, you end up with a car crash. Well, this is the Republican shutdown. This is the Republican car crash going to hurt all Americans because John Thune was unwilling to sit down and start talking about these issues.
I mean, what assurances would you need at this point from Republicans on health care to get you to sign on to maybe a stopgap bill, considering they have spent over a decade trying to destroy the ACA, a.k.a. Obamacare?
Well, it would have to be pretty, Vance actually said, I'm told, that some of these ideas you Democrats presented are good ideas and worth considering. Well, okay, great. Well, then start talking to us a couple months ago. But say, hey, yes, we don't want to increase the cost of healthcare by 75% here a couple months from now. That's bad for America, and quite frankly, it's bad for the Republican Party. We don't want to decimate Medicaid starting in January of 2027, where an incredible impact on not just those who have Medicaid across this country, and that includes people in nursing homes, the disabled, our veterans, so many folks. It's a program that affects a third of my state. Well, 30% of my state is on the Oregon Health Plan, and 60% of the children. I mean, it's a massive impact on decimating healthcare. Absolutely, basically, let's take and help the best off be better off while taking the struggling and hurting them. It's like a red carpet for the rich, and it's red tape and devastation for struggling families trying to get on their feet. This is the concern, and it's not just over the policies. It's over the fact that an authoritarian president is trying to take the power of the purse that belongs under Congress in the Constitution and take it and get an executive line item veto, which the Supreme Court has already said is illegal. They're doing it through funding slowdowns, funding freezes, funding basically grabbing the funds and saying we're never going to release them through this end of fiscal year rescission strategy. So we have to say no to this authoritarian takeover as well. And the piece that we have control over, a lot of the pieces we don't have control over, the piece we have control over is to say if we have passed into law funding for programs, it is the executive's responsibility to proceed to follow the law and distribute those funds to those programs, and not to freeze or impound or slow down or slow walk that funding to the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, Democrat.
So it is deadline day, and to state the obvious, it's literally Congress's job to fund the federal government. So it goes without saying that Congress, with the help of the White House right now, is not doing its job, since they are now barreling toward a shutdown if they can't agree on a spending deal by midnight tonight. This would be the first shutdown since December of 2018. That one lasted 35 days, making it the longest government shutdown in more than 4 decades. We can talk about the politics of all of this for hours. It's clearly all politics. But let's break down what a shutdown tangibly means for, well, you and millions of Americans. First off, hundreds of thousands of federal workers do now face the threat of mass layoffs by the Trump administration. We haven't seen that during any recent shutdowns. Members of the military would be forced to work without pay over the duration of a shutdown, and not to mention the hundreds of thousands of employees who will likely be furloughed from the federal government and not paid until this thing is over. Major government programs will be impacted. The FDA is warning food inspections and drug manufacturing sites, they will close. They also warn that the safety of the food that your family gets, the way they're putting it is, quote, would be significantly impacted. And then you have the U.S. Travel Association. It is warning of flight delays, longer security lines, and canceled trips because of potential staffing shortages, as if airports didn't have enough issues on their hands already. National parks and museums, they may also close. The Park Service lost $400,000 per day during the most recent shutdown. Something to remember here, the longer a shutdown goes on, the more that more critical programs and benefits start to run out, like SNAP benefits, which is often known as food stamps, or WIC, the Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children. They will start running out of remaining funding and may be unable to provide food for children and parents in need. Yes, the outlook is bleak when this thing drags on, but not everything shuts down. Essential services, they're kind of considered. The IRS will stay open thanks to funding that Democrats pushed in the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. Visas and passports, those will continue to be issued. Most Justice Department staff would stay on the job. Social Security checks, which is always a big question, they will still go out. FEMA response, NOAA forecasters, they will remain on the job. Veterans care and veterans services, they will also continue. Yes, that was a lot to unpack and could all be solved simply by Congress doing its job. But the biggest point here is the more prolonged a shutdown is, the more uncertain the funding becomes for services that reach farther and wider. Sarah?
That was a really good breakdown. And we should also mention that President Trump has threatened to make it more murky that mass layoffs, permanent ones, could happen with federal workers as well. So we will see what happens. And as you said, this is literally Congress's number one job, which is to fund the government. Thank you so much, Kate. All right, today, the Senate is expected to vote again on that Republican-backed bill that would keep the government funded for 7 weeks. GOP leaders say there will be multiple opportunities to keep the government open. Democratic leadership met with the president for...
Donald Trump is trying to divert your attention and for his own sanity, trying to run off to Portland and run off to Chicago and run off to any city that he effectively wants to invade. Although it should be remembered that he really doesn't want to go after red cities, right? We've talked about this. He doesn't want to go to red rural areas where the crime rates are significantly higher than, especially cities like Portland, right? Forget that. But the point is, he doesn't want you focusing on the shutdown and how it's going to affect material conditions for you and for other people, for people in the 99%. Because this is what it's about. Donald won the second time. He won because he pretended to address material conditions. Look, I'm not going to give an excuse for people who voted for Trump, especially part two. But people really did vote for him because they wanted prices lower. They did. They voted for him because they were worried about the cost of living and things like that. And not only has Trump failed to address cost of living, his moves here are going to make healthcare more unaffordable and more inaccessible. The real sense that Donald is about to make the life of the people, and let's be clear, the people who voted for him, but also the people who voted for Kamala, because fundamentally, like, the 99% voted for both parties, right? Like, you know, the working class, unlike the billionaire class, is often divided, and, you know, rich people, rich billionaires like Donald Trump, billionaires, right? Like Donald Trump, exploit that division. But right now, he's kind of giving cause for unity. Whether you're a Trump voter in rural Alabama, or you're a Democratic voter in, you know, rural Vermont, or you're a, you know, Republican voter in the Florida villages, or you're, you know, in downtown New York, you're a Democrat. You're being screwed right now by Trump shutdown.